And James, could I ask you to go ahead and formally call the meeting to order?
Thank you. Okay, I'm calling the PEN1 board to order. I'll go in alphabetical order, starting with Emerald Bogue.
Here.
Claudio Campuzano.
Present.
Annalisa Kohler.
Present.
And Jeff Noodleman.
Here.
And this is James Allison. I'm present. All 5 board supervisors are in attendance today.
Perfect. And so that is formally calling the 2020 PEN1 landowner meeting to order. Peggy, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself as well?
And I'm Peggy Yates. I am the executive director for PEN1 and work with board and with staff. Thank you.
Perfect. So Ken walked through the agenda. The first item of business is approval of last year's landowner meeting minutes. You should have received those in your packet. And then I would go ahead and accept a motion to approve those minutes unless there's any further discussion or questions anyone has on those.
I'd move to accept those minutes as presented in the packet.
Great. Is there a second? Perfect. Any other questions or thoughts? Yes. All those in favor of adopting those minutes, go ahead and wave your hand, or please be sure to indicate if you have a dissenting opinion. All right. All right. Those minutes are go ahead and approved. So the next item of business is the elections. And I guess I would just say to start out, thanks a lot for being kind of our guinea pig on this process. We have never tried to do a landowner meeting virtually. And so apologies if I stumble through this a little bit, but we're doing our best for on something that was created in 1917 and here a process, and here we are trying to do it over Zoom. So we're going to try to fit that square peg into this round hole. So there's 2 seats up for election this year in PEN1 and all the drainage districts. The elections are by seat or by term rather than by seat. So both the seats that have terms ending in 2023 are up for election this year. That's seat number 1 that's currently held by Emerald Bogue, and seat number 4 that's currently held by Jeff Noodleman. And so I think, as you know, any landowner or designated landowner representative is eligible to serve on the board. And how we usually manage this is we just accept nominations. You can nominate anyone who's eligible, and then we'll hold an election, and the top 2 who get the most votes will be awarded those seats on the board. So does anyone have any questions? So we'll start with nominations and then go from there and see how what next steps. So I'll go ahead and open the floor for nominations for the 2 seats with terms ending in 2023 on the board.
Well, I guess I do have a question. Are Emerald and Jeff interested in continuing, and are there any term limits?
There's no term limits, so I can answer that question.
I'd be happy to continue serving. We of course care about our acreage within PEN1, but we also care a lot about the integration of all of these districts and the mighty charge that they all have. So I'm happy to continue serving, if so nominated.
Yeah, I feel the same. If nominated and elected, I will serve.
In that case, James, let's do this to them. I mean, for them. I mean, let's bring them on board. I'll nominate Emerald Bogue for seat number 1, and Jeff Noodleman for seat number 4.
Great. Is there any other nominations out there? Okay, I'll go ahead and close the floor for nominations with like a slate of 2 with only 2 nominees. I think I'll just go ahead and sort of call for a similar voice vote. And so please indicate if you're dissenting, but otherwise all those in favor of approving those 2 nominees for these 2 open seats, please say aye, raise your hand, wave.
Aye.
Aye.
Perfect. Any opposed? Great. Well, congratulations, Emerald and Jeff. You're still on the board.
And we're very excited to have you.
Yes, grateful for your service.
I feel flattered.
So we can go ahead and move into our traditional staff presentations, and the first up is Janet.
Hi, I'm Janet Olson, and I'm the finance manager here at MCDD. I guess we're going to keep this real short, but this is to present the 2018-19 financial review. PEN1 does not have a full audit. They do a audited review based on their budget size. The audited financial report was completed by James Martin Company using the accrual method in accordance with all GAAP standards. The district did receive a clean financial audit free of any material misstatements. And if anybody would like a copy of the district's financial audit, just either contact me at the district, which my email is jolson@mcdd.org, or you can visit our website and pull up the audit there. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet. Seeing no questions in the chat, we're going to move forward to the next presenter. So Kevin.
I'm Kevin Severson. I'm the Senior Supervising Engineer and Managing Engineering Team at MCDD. A district operations update. We replaced, through a port-funded project, or repaired one of the pumps in the PIR Pump Station, and then we repaired pump 1 in the PIR Pump Station, and we're in the process of having the second pump repaired as well, along with some SCADA communications upgrades in the PIR Pump Station. And in our development review program, we haven't had many DRs in this last year in PEN1, but we had one that was a BES project where they were looking at the red dot you can see on that screen. They were doing some force main improvements. That force main sanitary sewer line does go through our levee system, but it's none of the repairs impacted that. We did send to the Corps of Engineers, and they approved the repair. And then we just very recently got this other project in that you can see in the green dot up by Marine Drive, and that is a power line replacement project, but in the ground near the levee. So it's pretty routine work. They'll probably have to do a minor excavation. I'm anticipating challenges with that. Here you can see our crew lead, Byron Zirkle, is standing in that photo on those pipes at one of the ditch safety and fall protection projects that have been funded by the city of Portland. They gave us $100,000, and PEN1 also gave us $20,000 to support that work. Right now, they're in the process. There's two sites. He's in the site that they've just been calling northwest of the track at PIR, but there's another site near Broadacre. They are in the process of doing the site development permitting for the Broadacre site, and then after that, they will do the site that you can see Byron standing there. Could be some issues just given that we are coordinating with a lot of city agencies, and response times are fairly slow with permitting due to COVID. So we're still hoping to complete these before the end of the fiscal year, but we don't know yet for sure if that's going to be possible. And then the other project that you can see there in the lower right is the drainage master plan that is BES funded. They are working with the parks for their inputs on some of the desired outcomes on the scope of work. They have not finalized the overall scope of work yet to put it out for a request for proposals, but they plan to in the near future, and so that's probably within the next month or so. They should have a finalized RFP that's out on the streets for people to submit on.
Kevin, James had his hand up, so I just wanted to give him a moment if he had a question about this slide.
Great, thanks, Kevin. Just a quick question and a quick comment to the item of the drainage master plan. Parks, BES staff, and MCDD staff have been coordinating pretty intensively on the RFP. It's been a lot of coordination and a lot of work, but it's been very positive. And just a kudos to park staff and to MCDD staff for working through those details. And then Kevin, that first slide, was that a photo inside the PIR pump station?
Can you go back to the previous slide, please, Connor?
That one, is that one on the right? That's not the inside of the PIR pump station.
Randy?
Yeah. Hey, this is Randy Lyons. I'm the operations manager. Yes, that is the inside of the PIR pump station.
I was going to say, because there's two pumps and they look like they've been redone, and it looks a lot nicer. I was expecting something that looked more outdated. So I think it probably reflects the work that you folks have been doing. So great work. Thank you for moving forward with those projects that were delayed.
Yeah, and just for everybody's knowledge, the blue pump is the one that's just been fixed, and that there was a pump 2, and that is the left pump. I'm sorry, pump 2, and that actually, even though it wasn't on the slides, that was actually completed yesterday. So that is that pump station is fully operational, and pumping a lot more water than it used to. So we're happy about that.
Great. Kevin, would you like me to continue or stay on development review?
No, I think we can go down to the slide called upcoming work on levies. So the picture in the lower left there is just the core stationing. They will be performing what they call a routine inspection of the PEN1 levee system. It will be following up on their periodic inspection that they performed, provided their comments on in 2018. So it's typically a lower level of intensive inspection, but they will kind of drive by and provide comments. And we are anticipating some feedback. There are a few outstanding items that have not been completed from the 2018 periodic inspection, and primarily the issues of concern were the outfalls, where you can see on the right. There's still some outfalls that need to be decommissioned along the levee segment of PEN1 that borders Marine Drive and Columbia there. That is in progress. The BES has a project manager assigned to that, and it's funded in their CIP, so that project is going forward. We just recently met with some folks at Metro about one of the outfalls that may be owned by them to have that possibly be included. So we're hoping, because of the level of mobilization needed to address these projects, that we can get everybody on board in sort of a joint effort, and then including potentially the graphic packaging. That's what GP vault abbreviation is meant to stand for, is the graphic packaging folks have a vault on the riverward side of the flood wall there that needs a new closure gate, and probably needs to have the discharge pipe relined. They are willing to perform that work. I met with them the other day. They have funding in their budget to address that, so they just need some help coordinating with some contractors that perform that type of work. But they've expressed that they are completely on board with doing the right thing and whatever needs to get done there to satisfy the Corps.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm going to move on to the next item on the agenda, which is an update from Colin, the feasibility study.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Colin Rowan, Deputy Director at MCDD and lead the Levy Ready Columbia program. Just going to give you a quick update on the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers feasibility study. Go to the next slide, please, Karan. So this study is a 3-year study fully funded by the federal government to determine if there is a federal nexus or it's in the federal interest to reinvest in our levee system. Just as a bit of history, the Army Corps of Engineers came in the 1930s and early 1940s through congressional authorization, made investments in the levee system. And again, in the 1950s, after the 1948 Vanport flood, the 1970s, and then in the 1990s. And so this is to determine if, again, it's in the federal interest to make these investments. The primary goals of the project or the feasibility study are to reduce flood damages, in particular to critical infrastructure throughout the system. And this is authorized for all 4 of the drainage districts. It's to reduce threats to life safety from flooding, as well as increasing awareness of flood risks throughout the system, increasing resiliency. And so that is really a matter of having a certain level of reliability and redundancy in the system. That's our cross levees, that is the pumping stations that are located in each one of the districts, as well as just shoring up the actual levee segments and making sure that they are ready for future floods. You go to the next slide, please, Karan. So just wanted to let you know where we are in this feasibility study process, and then I'll talk a little bit about what the next steps are and also what some of the current findings are in the study as they relate to PEN1. So the study started in October of 2018. We have gone through a number of milestones where the Army Corps of Engineers basically needs to get both buy-in from the non-federal sponsors. The PEN1 board is part of that non-federal sponsor. Also, they've already reached out to the public at that number 3, the tentatively selected plan milestone. They've gone through a lot of review through the different levels of the Corps. The Corps basically has 3 levels. They have the Portland District, which is our local project managers. They have a division, which basically is all of the Northwest in the Missouri River Basin. And they have headquarters, so they needed those levels of review. In April, we were able to pass through what's called the agency decision milestone, where the non-federal sponsor of the boards, signed off and basically said that they agreed with continuing the study as well as those different levels of review in the Corps. We then went into a refinement process. And so what we had previously brought to the public, to the boards as well, went through a thorough review, making sure that the public comments were incorporated as applicable, that the different comments that came in from our district boards were also integrated, as well as making sure that the actual design recommended was adequate. And so we've gone through this refinement process. I'm going to, in the next slide, but not quite yet, I'll tell you about sort of what has been refined, but just the next steps ahead are the Corps will submit a final recommended plan to headquarters. Right now, it's aiming to be early April of 2021. The drainage district boards will need to sign a letter basically agreeing to that transmittal. So there's a decision point there. And then it will actually be over at Corps headquarters in DC for a while, where they will basically do a lot of internal review. If it is seen to be in the federal interest to reinvest in the system, a chief's report will be signed. That will end the feasibility study. which is really just the beginning of a much longer process to get some of these federal projects constructed. So we'll be needing congressional authorization. We'll also need to go through something called the pre-engineering design phase, which takes the projects from about 30% design, sort of conceptual level, all the way up to something that could be constructed. And then we'll actually need congressional appropriations to pay for and basically direct the Corps to pay for the projects in the construction phase. So our very best guess for estimated time on that is that we would go into that pre-engineering design phase in 2022, and that the construction phase could begin as early as 2025. Again, it could be later than that, but that's our best estimate for earliest part. So Connolly, please go to the next slide. Just want to quickly let you know what has been happening as it relates to Peninsula Drainage District number 1. So really just those numbers 1 through 5 that you see on this alignment. So number 1 is the levee that is along the slough on the south facing side of PEN1 is considered overly fragile. There's some concerns about its ability to handle flooding in the Columbia Slough. And just as a note, that's really one of the most susceptible areas in the whole system. And the Willamette River is slightly steeper than the Columbia River and backs up through Smith and Bybee wetlands. And that is exactly the scenario in 1948 that caused the Vanport flood, where that backed up. So number 1 would be a project to reinforce that levee and bring it up to modern standards. The number 2 is probably one of the most significant, and many of you have heard a lot about this, is that the western side of PEN1 is a non-levee embankment that is made up of a railroad trestle that is backfilled with dirt. Project number 2 would actually create a parallel levee adjacent to the railroad embankment that would be a true levee engineered, and PEN1, the drainage districts, would have full operating control and emergency management control of it and not have to rely upon the railroads for maintenance and access. So that is a very large project that is being carefully coordinated with Portland Parks as that is abuts and goes over some of the Heron Lakes Golf Course. Project number 3 is a section of flood wall that would tie into the existing flood wall. And just want to make a note that we've had really good conversations with Peninsula Terminal Rail Company that operates the spur line there. And we are working on developing a plan that would run a section of the flood wall under their spur line, and means that be able to preserve the Heron Rookery that is located right by a graphic packaging property, and increase the flood risk reduction level at that area. Project number 4 is basically just a slight reinforcement being needed for your existing flood wall that is on the northern side of PEN1. And that is something as simple as a 3-foot wide sidewalk can be placed next to the existing flood wall. And it's really an amount of scour protection to reinforce the flood wall at that location. And then the final piece of the puzzle for PEN1 is that project number 5. On the northern side of PEN1, there is a existing flood wall. Some of it really just looks like a curb, and it is inadequate as for flood risk reduction and modern standards. So it'd be removing that, adding some additional flood wall, and tying in properly to PEN2 system. So keeping water from basically finding its way around the side of the flood wall and into the system. So those are the big projects identified for the system. Again, the Corps and the non-federal sponsors, the drainage districts, have a lot more work to do on this, but it's a very positive result, and I think will really increase the reliability and function of the system. And I'm going to, on October 28th, the Corps and MCDD staff provided a community update. I'm going to put those slides in the chat if you want to get more. There's much more detail on those different projects slides, and also we have.
We lost you, Colin.
Uh-oh.
Able to hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. If you'd like to watch the recording or take a look at the slides, please go to the link that I just put into the chat. mcdd.org portfolio item US feasibility study. So thank you.
Thank you, Colin. We are running ahead of schedule a little, so welcome any questions from meeting participants if you want to speak up. Thank you, Colin. And now I will hand it over to Peggy for our update on the new district.
And first of all, I just want to, you got a pretty quick onslaught of information from staff, and I appreciate the staff's work in getting this in prepared in advance of the meeting. So I want to thank you about that. The final piece that we've been working on this year and will be ongoing is the Urban Flood Safety Water Quality District. Can you turn the slide, please, for me? This, many of you may be aware of that the Senate Bill 431 was passed in the 2019 legislature, which established an urban flood safety water quality district. This was promoted by the districts and by LRC and community participants in recognition that we have historically been running 4 separate districts that were established in 1919, very functional, but a recognition that there was a really needed a process that could help to modernize the system, gain some economies of scale, address the recognizing it's an overall system and not 4 separate ones, and being able to establish a funding mechanism, and also do the necessary improvements across the organization, across the 4 districts in a consistent manner. So in the Senate bill, it was set up that the lands protected by the Columbia River recognize that this Columbia River levee system in northern Multnomah County is a statewide significance and regional significance, which I think is a really important recognition of how critical this infrastructure is, and one of the most critical pieces of infrastructure across the state. And it protects transportation, it protects homes, it protects economic lands, drinking water, a multitude, and some natural assets that we have not had, that we've not really, it hasn't been the district's responsibility before. But the bill also recognized that there's a historic significance to this area that has had flooding over the years. I think we've had 6 floods over the last 100 years. Of course, Vanport, as Colin stated, is ingrained in everyone's mind. And set up a new special district that has the authority and financial capacity to carry out its purpose. And that to me is one of the biggest pieces. So addressing a mechanism that can establish funding to protect and to fund this entire system in a more economic way and more consistent way. Next slide, please. This slide really begins to, it helps to kind of identify what the existing drainage districts do now and what the expanded mission is of the new district. And the existing districts are really focused on flood risk management, protect people and property, emergency response, and an ability to maintain the conveyance system, not just the levees, but the conveyance systems. The new mission includes that, the Urban Flood Safety Water Drop Quality District includes those missions, and then it has expanded oversight to improve the water quality, fish habitat, wildlife, floodplain restoration, and landscape resiliency, promote equity and social justice, help to prepare the organization and adapt to the impact of climate change as it relates to our floodplain, and to also provide the public information about the history of the area, of the cultural history, and making this a government that is inclusive of everyone. Next slide, please. When we talk about one of the biggest responsibilities of the district that has been set up, and I'll talk about that in a minute, is how do we, the initial district, which has already met and started meeting in May, and it is a new government structure, so it requires a lot of administrative, legal, and and general support to get itself established. And its role is to really develop a funding mechanism that reflects benefits and costs to the whole region. And currently, as you see on this map, in red outline are the various existing drainage districts that were established back in 1919. In the blue area, you see the watershed boundary. And then more extensively, you see kind of in yellow, the Oregon Statute 550, which is reflective of the Senate Bill 431, the boundaries associated with that. This provides an ability to charge people, if they are receiving benefits from the system, they pay into the system. Currently, the districts are just reflective of the districts that were established. And there are benefits being received for water flow, et cetera, and conveyance that's not currently getting collected and hasn't been the mandate. Next slide, please. And a little bit of the difference of seeing kind of board membership and who's represented, as you did today. The drainage districts have a board membership. They're elected by the landowners, which you just went through that process with Emily. The new district, which has been established, like I said, it was established in May. They had their first opportunity to sit down, is kind of divided into two components. The initial board is representative of 13 elected members from their various communities, as you see, and 5 governor appointees. That board, as I said, their major focus is in establishing the organization itself, this new government, and identifying a funding mechanism reflective of cost and benefits. Ultimately, they will, once that is established and set up, there will be an opportunity that the permanent board that will be established will be elected officials, 5 elected members and 4 governor appointees. Next slide, please. Thank you. And just to help get an idea of timelines, the first section is Peninsula Drainage District number 1, and this district will continue to operate as a district. It could happen as early as 23. I'm taking a much more conservative approach that will continue to operate through probably into 2025. And At the time that the new permanent board is set up with the Urban Flood Safety Water Quality District, is that then these the boards, the PEN1 will be dissolved and absorbed into the new district. The new district is right now, as I said, setting up its administration, contracts, policies, etc., and undergoing a revenue development process, which they're just initiating. At the time that they get that together, you will see that they will be collecting, they will start to collect their revenues, which there'll be a little bit of we'll be sure that there is not two collections or double dipping. One will be merging into the other. And then that permanent board will be elected in 2025. And then they will call for dissolution of that new district. And the districts, PEN1 has the opportunity to, if they have up to a year for that dissolution. They may decide the day they're asked to call for dissolution to dissolve, or they may stay together for another year. And I just want to overlay onto this the Army Corps of Engineers work that Colin was referring to. We will be getting word in October, as he said, of the chief's report on the feasibility study. We would then be going in mid-22, probably takes a couple of years to do the PED. We will then be going out and working a mechanism to support the construction, probably at the end of 25, maybe a little sooner, depending on where the timeline slips. Are there any questions? I know that's a lot, but. And if not, I'll turn it over to Karen.
Thanks, Peggy, and thank you to all of the staff who very succinctly summed up very complicated information. And at this time of the meeting, it's an opportunity for questions or for any announcements from landowners or landowning entity representatives. So we welcome anybody. Since we're in a small group, you're welcome to just unmute yourself and speak of any questions or announcements. Great. Hearing none, we can move forward with going ahead and adjourning the meeting. And we'll put up on here if anybody has any follow-up questions, you're welcome to email me. I sent you the packet material on any of the presentations. You can find out more information on both the websites, MCDD, which was referred to numerous times today, or leveereadycolumbia.org for the accreditation process. And for now, I think that closes our meeting. So thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you to you and all staff. We really appreciate it. And thank you for keeping all of these big things moving while things are pretty crazy in the world. So truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Just echo that. We've seen these presentations before, and as usual, they're well organized. The graphics look great. And, you know, this is, I always have to remind myself this is a public meeting. And so if I were showing up here the first time and going through this presentation, being led through the information, it would be very clear. So thank you.
Great job, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks to staff.